I'm Gina Cooper, co-founder of Loffty Mental Health Assessment, and today we're having a chat with a lovely client of ours, Rachel Thorburn. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Gina. How are you going?
Good. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So I thought I'd give a brief introduction so that the people at home have a bit of background on you, Rachel. Rachel Thorburn is a mother of two based in Hamilton, New Zealand, who has struggled with her mental health for many years before discovering Loffty Mental Health Assessment and then getting diagnosed for adult ADHD. She is a trained teacher and a rapid transformational therapy, that's RTT, practitioner. She loves helping others be the best version of themselves by helping them release old beliefs that no longer serve them. Today, we're having a chat about how Rachel has managed to turn her own mental health around and build a life that she loves. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you're a client of Loffty and you completed the Loffty assessment in 2021, is that right? And how would you describe that?
Journey also, yeah. So last year I had a hysterectomy, which changed the hormones, and I was like, something else is going on. There's something else weird happening. Like I wanted to do things, but I couldn't get off the sofa. It was weird. It was like I was like a brick. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And so I thought there must be something else going on. So I looked up, hormones and, motivation and stuff like that. And then the Loffty report came up. So I thought, oh, that's different. Like I've never seen that before. I'll see what comes out with it. So I clicked on the link and went into the individual report and answered all the questions. Lo and behold, didn't expect the result that I was going to get, because what came out was in the headings, probable ADHD. And I was like, that's interesting. Never ever thought about that for myself, ever. And no one has ever thought of it or mentioned it. And then I just was like, wow, I've got something else to explore. So then I did some research, and it fit with me and it fit with the symptoms. And I looked up, low estrogen and after the hysterectomy and low dopamine. And when they're both low together, it's really debilitating for women if you're not diagnosed and, on the correct medication. So I said, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And just looking back over my life with hormones and pregnancy and, menstrual times and how I was affected by, the symptoms, it made a lot of sense. Yes, I just did a bit of research after that to sort of, work it out. And it was fascinating.
So it came as a bit of a surprise to you that the Loffty report came up with adult ADHD.
Yeah, never, ever, not once in my whole life has anyone ever said, ADHD as a something that I'm dealing with or having to manage.
So had you been screened for depression or anxiety and things like that before?
Yeah, so back in probably in my late teens, I think I would have started the depression. Struggled a little bit through high school, but not so much. And then so probably teens to mid-20s, and I hit rock bottom in my mid-20s. And then I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and severe depression. So it's sort of like I hit the wall at about 25 of, managing the stuff that had gone on before as well.
Yeah. And so I just find that baffling that nobody had screened you for ADHD. I guess you had never done a multi-disorder assessment before that covered a number of coexisting conditions.
Never. And so I think the other thing for women as well is that we get the mood disorder stuff, like the personality disorders, and they, because you're very emotionally driven, my brain was quite noisy and I'd emotionally react. And so they look at that as the mood side of it. Whereas, so, and then with the depression, and there was a little bit of trauma as well in my early teens. And so they just put that together as, a mood disorder, borderline personality disorder, or another one that I got was in 2000, when I was 26 or later, was bipolar, because I made an impulsive move to Australia in 2004. And then I was, not well, and they just went, oh, you've got bipolar. And I was like, okay. And I was looking it up going, no, that doesn't really work. I don't like this. It didn't fit. But then goes the myriad of, mood and depression medications, loads and loads of trials of different things, and it just numbs you and you just move. And it didn't I think it's like a band-aid. So I suppose the depression meds and it got me through. You know, I survived amongst some attempts of to not survive, but it wasn't the right fit for me. I just still didn't feel right. I needed something. Well, it didn't fit.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be surprised, but unfortunately, I'm not too surprised because we hear these kinds of stories all the time from people. You know, misdiagnosis and missed diagnosis does happen, and there's about 4 to 5%, an estimated 4 to 5% of the population who are undiagnosed with adult ADHD, and often it's you know, when people's children are diagnosed and they go, oh, hang on a minute here, I recognize these symptoms in myself. And, you know, ADHD runs in families. So, yeah, terrible story. It's a lot of years of suffering there, you know, unnecessarily. But unfortunately, it's not a very uncommon experience for people, we find. So I'm so glad that you somehow found Loffty on the internet. And
you saved my life. The best $50 I've ever spent in my whole entire life. I'm like, it's turned a massive corner. And I think the other thing is that to learn that it's physiological, so it's a neurodiversity, it's not mental health disorder. I mean, it is. You get the symptoms of depression and anxiety and, you know, for being undiagnosed, but to learn that actually your brain is wired differently, because I always felt different. I always thought, over-talked, overshared, interrupted, you know, very inquisitive, very love researching and love study. And I was always like notice details, and I just felt different than everybody else. And to know then that difference is neurodiversity, it's physiological, it's not a mental health issue. Well, you know, as such, your brain is structured differently and it needs different meds. It doesn't, you know, I don't actually think you can fix the physiological side.
Apparently what they're saying is that it is genetic, you know, that's what runs in families. So it's actually the structure of the brain. I suppose we should just briefly explain what ADHD is. Do you want to have a go at that for people that may not be aware of what ADHD is?
I think people say it's a attention deficit, but actually I reckon you've got heightened attention, and that's more like you've got attention to detail, you notice, you take in the environment. You probably look like you can't manage your time, but I think you're trying to get things perfect and you're trying to get it right. So then the procrastination comes in. So the time of getting things done, you lose focus if you're not getting it perfect. So for me, because I think it's individual for everybody else, my ones would be distraction. So like if I found it really quite hard to focus before I started on the medication, without all the noise in the background of all the other things on my list of things to do. Whereas now I can sit there and focus for a couple of hours on what I need to do without that stuff going on. It's on my little list, but I don't think, I must go and do that. And I'm not jumping everywhere. I can actually be present. And I think that was what I wasn't with my kids before. I struggled to be present, you know, to sit there and watch a movie. Another thing for me is I get very bored very easily. So like it's very deep boredom. Like if I'm extremely bored in a movie, I flick off and I can't deal with it. It's like I need to go and do something because it's not
stimulating you enough, is it?
What's that?
We don't find it stimulating enough.
Yes, and so I like things that I like learning, and I like, you know, using my brain. Other things for me, very talkative, interrupting, and I've always been told you don't listen, which is funny now because it makes sense, but I find it hard to listen. But I'm a lot better since I'm on the medication because I'm not thinking of other things, I'm not distracted.
Yeah.
And overshare, so my brain is a lot of detail orientated, so I probably give a lot of detail and then I walk away and think, oh, I gave them a lot of information, and that was quite a lot of information. Sometimes it's probably a little bit much. So, but what I'm learning is that I say to people, look, I do overshare, I interrupt, and I'm quite, you know, I suppose full on sometimes, and just tell me, like if I'm talking too much, please just say, you know, it's okay if you need a break from the chatting. What else? Impulsivity, not so much now. I've learned to manage that. Like I've learned to think through, you know, the choices. Well, for me, I love study, so I did really, really well at school. So that was, and I think that's part of how you get missed as women. Like I got straight A's at school. I could have left school in sixth form, went to university in my 30s, and got top 5%. And then at Tech, when I left school, I got top student, and I was always excelling, A's. And did really well at school because it was structured. But then when I went to university in my 30s, struggled and found it really hard because it wasn't as structured. And I had this time and this timetable with 3 hours. And I'm like, I don't know how to. And I suppose it's another thing is I need structure. Like I've got a diary that, I've got all my appointments and I know what I'm doing. And if I get something thrown at me, it sort of throws me and I have to sort of adjust and think, I've got to try and work around that. But with university, I used the disability support service, and I didn't realise until I'd been diagnosed, last year. I was like, oh, that's amazing. I used that service. Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? When you look back, I needed a note taker because I was, needing help with medications. The support of the lady Margaret at the university, amazing support, just to bounce ideas off. And I had my own room for exams, extra time for assignments. And we had the disability support unit where I could just be without all the noise and feel like I was still connected to people, because that's another thing is I grew up quite lonely. Like you're around people and you feel like you got friends, but you feel like you're different. So you feel quite alone and things. But no, not now. Like it's different now. I'm not bothered about having to have loads of friends. I've got friends that, funnily enough, are getting diagnosed now as well.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? So there's 3 types of ADHD, they say, aren't there? There's the hyperactive, which is your typical naughty little boy, and then there's the inattentive type, which they tend to be more dreamy, and that's often the women and girls, isn't it? And then there's the mixture. You can have a mixture of sort of both, apparently. So seeing that more and more women are starting to be picked up. ADHD is often very successful, ambitious, perfectionist, very amazing at strategy and creative ideas. I mean, we've got Richard Branson, loads of famous people with ADHD, and it can be a superpower for people,
Massively is, definitely.
It's not always a sort of troubled student, a picture, there's a bit more to it, and it can be quite complex to sort of pick up. But yeah, so that's interesting to hear. That's really great that you've shared your sort of what your relationships were like, struggles with study, attention, time and planning and things like that. I think many people were
also fascinating enough, career. If I'd have been diagnosed when I was in my teens and on this medication that I'm on now, I think my career would have been an amazing, completely different path, because of the intense boredom and the distraction and the stuff trying to manage and survive, I suppose, and trying to deal with life. I haven't really had a career where I've gone full on into it and been majorly successful. I'm not saying I'm unsuccessful, because I'm successful in many other ways, but I sort of flitted between jobs. And then when I had children, I made a decision to, be there for my kids. So I did the teacher training beforehand. But even so, within that, I've been a relief teacher. So I haven't actually worked full time because I feel like I haven't been able to actually manage it. Like some of the jobs I got really bored in, or I found it really highly stressful. Like when I was in Sydney, I worked for, I was an executive assistant for the CEO of this recruitment agency, and it was just high powered, high stress, high thing. And I just, didn't cope with it. It didn't manage it. And you look at people and they're in their jobs for years and you think, how come? And that now it makes sense that the path to where I am now, and the choices from what was going on for me have made that. Whereas if I go back to when I was like 14, say if I had been diagnosed and been on the medication, it might have been a bit more, I suppose, linear. But in saying that, it's made me who I am today.
Exactly. ADHDers often find that they have a lot of unfinished things around them, or sort of failed relationships, or unfinished projects, unfinished things.
Well, that's funny you say that, because now I can't even read a whole book. I actually don't even read anymore, which is weird. I do Audible. Another one is I never finish a book. So on Audible, I've got all these half-finished books. And I might get interested in something and then jump to another thing. well, that was worse than what it is. Like, it's not like that now, but you know, I used to sort of get really intensely hyper focused on one thing for like 4 days, and I'd be like right into it, and if anyone interrupted me, I'd be like, go away, I'm doing this. But now it was a bit more leveled, you know, focused.
That's good to hear. And I guess it's working with your strengths, isn't it? You know, ADHDs have great strengths, and it's just knowing what they are and how to work with them. So thank you for sharing that. It's really generous of you to share, you know, what life was like before, which sounds very challenging. And, you know, kudos to you for hanging in there and sticking in it. And, you know.
Well, there is a lot more challenges that I would think that it's quite important to talk about, because as a symptom of being undiagnosed, you take on coping mechanisms, and initially it was probably a little bit of finding love in the wrong places, and then alcohol, and then a bit of so then I did the drinking thing and the smoking back in the day. I don't do that anymore, but it was all the mechanisms to cope. So it was sort of you're finding love in the wrong places, you're sort of a bit more risky, you do the drinking and the smoking thing, and then it turned to eating after I had kids, because obviously once I had kids, I was like, well, that's not my cup of tea, you know, the behaviours I did before. But then I took on the eating, so it was that high, trying to get the dopamine hits from all this thing. And I learned that the eating thing was fascinating, is that apparently you crave carbs and sugar for dopamine hits, and so that's why. And then when you're emotionally driven, like I noticed when I was sad or lonely, I went to food, and that's the dopamine, you know, thing. And so now, like since I've started on the medication, I don't really crave, I don't emotionally eat, I don't have a crutch, I don't really drink, I don't need anything to feel happy. I just feel heaps better.
Well, that's so good to hear. That's awesome. So let's start. So how did you discover Loffty? How did you hear about us? How did you find the assessment?
Well, I'd never heard about you in all the times of my studies, of all the, you know, mental health and wellbeing and passion around it all. And I think I Googled, you know, assessment. No, I'm pretty sure I Googled hormones and no motivation and, you know, some key words, and it came up with the Loffty assessment, you know, heading. I thought, well, I've done all these online tests before, but what was different is that yours had the 30, you know, diagnostic, you know, out of the DSM. And so it was a broad thing. So it wasn't you just looking at, I'm doing a test to see if I've got autism, or I'm doing an online test to see one specific thing. It was broad. And I like the fact that, you know, when I went in, I answered all the questions, that I knew that it was going to come out with things that, well, I just felt it was the right space, you know, to come out with something a bit
more comprehensive.
Broader. It was broader than what I'd been thinking. And it was, funnily enough, like it even came up with possible device addiction. And that's because of answering the questions with, you know, how much I'm on my phone doing bits and pieces. So it's very thorough, you know, after you do the questions, the little sections that it comes up with, the likely, the possible, the probable, and the advice to, you know, I strongly recommend, you know, you do. And when it said the ADHD, I was like, wow, that's fascinating. That makes so much sense. And I, you know, sort of started thinking, that's interesting.
So I gave you a report that said, that went through the different disorders and brought up anything that was flagged through the questions. You were asked a lot of questions. Probably took you about 15 minutes to do the test. Is that right?
Assessment? Yeah, 15, 20 minutes. Yep.
And
answering, and I answered very honestly this time. Like, I really thought about how I'm actually behaving and thinking and feeling, not just, you know, quickly do it. I was actually really
thoughtful in the process. So is that because you felt a bit more comfortable answering to a computer and not a person, or?
Yeah. And because I knew that it had a myriad of difference. It wasn't just you're answering one. It was there was a whole, you know, 30 of them, of the bits and pieces. So I was quite fascinated to see how it came out. It was quite interesting to see, you know, possible anxiety and stuff like that. And that made sense, because undiagnosed, yes, I did have the anxiety, but I keep thinking last year, oh, like, because when I went to the doctor before I did the Loffty report, she said, oh, maybe you need to be on the antidepressant or the mood thing. I'm like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm happy with my life. I love my life. I just can't get off the sofa and I don't know why. And I was, the two different, the hormones and the dopamine. And so it was like puzzling. So you're wiping out the path of the depression and the mood and the stuff. And then the possible anxiety, which was understandable, and then the probable device addiction, which has made me laugh, and then the probable ADHD, and I was like, that really worked, that fits.
Awesome. And you chose to share that with your GP in Hamilton. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so in the report you can put, I'm pretty sure it's been a while, but you put your practitioner's name and details and whether you'd like to share it with them. And she got the report, and then I got an email from her, and it had the report, maybe it was attached to my My Health app, and in it she had added some bits and pieces, sort of like background on the report. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. So then I felt like I had some evidence of something to back me up, because you go along and you talk and you're trying to discover, and it's just what you're saying and how you're presenting and what you've told them. But whereas I felt like I had this evidence, like piece of paper, that actually spit out after I've actually answered all these questions and said probable ADHD, and I felt so like justified. So then I made the appointment with the doctor, took it along, and she'd already seen it and talked about it, and she said, yeah, I really think that's a definite thing for you. It makes sense, and let's start the journey to working with that to see. So then she I'd already researched someone that had some knowledge with women and ADHD, because there's a lot of difference in the presentation between women and girls, and I wanted someone that had more knowledge of that to safeguard myself. I don't want to get mixed up with I'm not a boy, because it's that typical naughty boy and all the boy stuff. So then she referred me to my psychiatrist, or the new psychiatrist that I've chosen, and I got an appointment within a couple of months, I think.
And so having the Loffty report sounds like it gave you quite a lot of confidence to walk into your GP and say, hey, I'm pretty confident that this is what's going on. It gave you a way to sort of voice your challenges and your symptoms and your experience.
Gave me support as well. If you were to say like that support of validating that something that I already knew within me, like I said earlier, that I didn't feel like I had mood disorders and personality disorders, and it didn't feel right, and it gave me that that validation, or that what did I say before, that not justification, but it felt right, actually, is what it is.
And then you were able to actually, when you were alerted to the fact that this could be a thing for you, you could actually research online who would be a GP with a specialty in that area. And yeah, I guess it makes a real difference to talk to someone who really knows their stuff about ADHD.
Because you're relying on the health service and the specialists and the practitioners and the psychologists and the psychiatrists. You're relying on them. I relied on them all my life to help me. And when you discover something from like Loffty, and you think, well, hang on a sec, that's put a curveball in the whole thing of all the system that I've been in with all the people that have helped me or worked with me. It just gives you it's different. I think it's very important to have for people, because it's not like a diabetic goes along and has a test, and I'm not making it easy for diabetics whatsoever, but at least they can get a test and know that they're diabetic. Whereas with ADHD, you can't, well, there's things coming out with blood tests and brain scans, but you can't actually go to the doctor and get a blood test now, and it says you've got ADHD. So it's like, and even then when you go to do it, you're starting to question yourself and going, am I just making this up? Is this real? But yeah, this piece of paper that says it, so actually, you can give a bit of kudos to that.
And how was seeing the psychiatrist? Who did you see?
Eamon Egan from Antares in Hamilton. He's a psychiatrist in adult mental health and ADHD. specialist. Well, I thought, I think he is a specialist in the ADHD side of things. So I just Googled and found him, and we had an online meeting because it was lockdown. So our initial, meetup was online, which I was a little bit nervous about because I was like, oh, I want to see him in person. But at the end of the day, you kind of have 1 or 2 appointments anyway to work it out. It's not, some people may be in the first appointment. So we had an initial appointment, and he had the Loffty report, and I sent that to him. And he'd asked for school reports and stuff like that to look over. So then we just chatted about the background of my past and stuff like that. And then we needed to make another appointment because I had some questionnaires that he wanted me to fill out, which were, to do with ADHD, that they sort of need done, I suppose. So he emailed those. I filled them out, sent them off, and then had a second appointment. And that's when he said, yeah, I definitely think it fits for you, like, with your school reports of talkative, interrupting, and gets bored easily, and the presentation with, the hormones and just and the Loffty report, definitely like that. He was like, it definitely fits for you, and let's see if that, the medication is going to be great for you.
And it showed your coexisting conditions and your medical history and any medications you'd been on previously and side effects and that sort of thing. So it's not just the disorders, but also all that interesting other stuff, like have you had a concussion, trauma, abuse, anything like that. It screens for all those other things as well. So it kind of gives them that full picture, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. So it's got all the extra sections, and then the doctor can fill out as much as they want to give them that information, because he's never met me before. So he's just been presented with that and what I talk about and the tests that I've done. But the Loffty definitely it's been the pivotal turning point in my entire life. Like, I couldn't thank you enough for creating this platform for people like me. It's phenomenal.
$50. That's awesome to hear, Rachel. Just it's the best part of our day to hear these kinds of stories from people. It really does make a difference to us to hear people.
Well, the difference it's made is extraordinary. Like, so then I started on medications. I started on Ritalin, which never had ever before in my life. So I wasn't on anything when I started. I hadn't been on any medication for a while. And 2 days in, and I noticed, I was like, wow. I said to my partner, if you have been living like this throughout your whole life, you are one lucky man, because this feels amazing. And I just felt like the noise had stopped. It was nice and quiet. I felt great about myself. I felt didn't feel any anxiety. I felt just at peace and calm and present. And when you get a med review a couple of weeks later after you start, and I said to him, this is just phenomenal. I feel this is definitely the right fit for me, and I'm absolutely, stoked I've found what I need, that I've been struggling with all my life. Struggle streets.
Wow. And so you tried a few different doses of that to get to the optimum level of Ritalin?
I started at 10. I think it was a couple of weeks later, went up to 20, then 30, and then I had a bit of stress come into my life, personal stuff, and I said to him, I think, let's try 40 and see. And it was phenomenal. Like, I managed what I had to go through, in my personal life really, really well, very logically, calmly. I was a little stressed. If I hadn't had that, the Ritalin, I would have been a ball of emotional overwhelm and stress. And I think that's the big thing I love, is I'm very logical now and very not emotionally driven. Like, I used to cry a lot, and I used to get really intensely emotional, and things used to really affect me. And now, if something happens that's upsetting, it goes in a couple of hours, and I'm just moving on with my day. Whereas before, it would be 3 or 4 days of just, drowning in it, feeling so intensely sad or emotional or anxious or stressed or whatever. But now I can cope with, what I'm being thrown at me a lot easier.
It must be so freeing.
It is, because you're not reacting. I don't react, and I can, especially with the kids, I love that. Before, I used to be quite reactive and a bit reactive, and now I'm very calm, and it's made it, you know, really neat atmosphere for the kids, and I can go out because I'm not bored doing something, which sounds terrible, but I can go out and do things I wouldn't normally do with them because I don't have those symptoms that I was managing, you know, each time I used to go out, because there's a little bit of OCD going on as well, you know, with a bit of sensory stuff. So it's taken the heightened part of that away as well. It's taken the edge off it. So
the overwhelm.
Yeah, like with sensory, like I have a bit of you know, noise, like someone crunching on an apple, crunching ice, clicking a pen in the lectures in the old days, tapping a foot or something. And I've noticed that if I'm really tired, sensory stuff is quite hard to manage. And if I'm stressed, it's hard to manage. But what's happened with having the medication is it's I don't have the emotional tide draining thing going on, and stress is easy to deal with. So then the sensory, it's taken the edge off the sensory stuff. So
yeah, that's awesome. And so
then you can go out and manage the world because you've not got all the stuff coming at you.
Yeah. And so you're a better mum. And what about your relationship with your partner? How's that?
Definitely, yeah, that's awesome. Like, because the other thing is how you feel about yourself is then projected onto your relationship and your partner. So I would do a lot of projecting, like say if I'm feeling sad or something, I don't realize it, or whatever intense stuff going on, I would project it on that it's him causing all the problems, but it's actually me and what's going on internally. And so what I've realized now that I'm more logical and less emotional and less thing, is I can see clearly the different things going on for myself. So then it's like he's always the same. I'm the one that's going up and down and around, but not so much anymore. It's more level, you know, and a lot more enjoyable to be in a relationship because I'm feeling happier within myself and calmer and not so emotionally driven.
Oh, that's awesome. And so when we talk about treating ADHD, we talk about pills and skills. You had the pills. Did you sort of get any help with skills, any ADHD coaching or?
Well, it's funny you say that because when you go, so I had coaching during the diagnosis. So with RTT, we have a new thing called RTC, which is rapid transformational coaching. And so I enrolled in that, and I was getting the coaching at the time I was going through the diagnosis. So I said to her, it's a bit tricky to do this at the moment because I haven't got the medication and I haven't been formally diagnosed. So that was a bit of, but I went to, after the diagnosis, you sort of download everything and look back at your past and look at what there's a bit of grieving going on. And then you go, right, okay, what do I need to get some help with? So the executive function stuff, I sort of realized there's a bit of stuff going on there. I didn't want to go to someone that didn't have ADHD or didn't work with people with ADHD because you get told, set a goal, put it in your diary, have big goals, prioritize. You get told all these things, and it's like, I know all of that, and you know a lot. That's the funny thing,
yes,
the doing and the successfully getting through those things that I struggled with, weirdly enough. So I saw a coach, an ADHD coach, for a session and realized I actually know a lot of what she's saying because I've done a lot of study and trained to be a therapist, but also my own journey and self-discovery. So I just left it for a little bit, and I've realized, yes, I do need the things that I probably need skilling in. I'm not really interested in it anyway, so I'm going to outsource that. So I'm going to use my superpowers and do of things that I'm good at, and then what I'm not good at and not interested in learning about or I'm bored with, I'll just outsource that and pay someone. So, within my own business, I just want to do I want to help people with heal their wounds and have them have a great life. I just want to do that. So I'm going to outsource, the business stuff. I'm not interested in learning about marketing, I've realized, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've turned a corner. I'm looking at strengths more now, rather than before it was deficits and grieving, and now it's strengths and right. What have I got to offer the world, and how can I help other women, that are going through this or been through it, and what am I good at? Let's use those things. So, but the other interesting thing is though, when you get diagnosed and you get the medication, it's like nothing else afterwards, and you're sitting there going, okay, I've got the diagnosis, I've got the meds, now what? It's still like, it's not perfect. I still need some help, and actually that's where it's really hard to work out where to go to get. There's not much out there, to be honest.
There's coaches out there. There's some great
there is, but it's trying to find them.
Yeah.
You put money into someone that you don't know is going to get you. If you've done it a lot, you want to make sure you get the right person to put the money into. And so your forum, you know, the one that you did.
The summit.
Yeah, the summit. So that was cool because that had, you know, a couple of coaches in there, but I wanted someone New Zealand, culturally as well. And then you've got to find the specific things that you want to work on and that they have the knowledge in that. So it's quite tricky. And with the other stuff that we've been talking about is going to get created, that will help.
Well, that's something we'd love to help people with, and so watch the space.
Definitely. It's very exciting what's coming up.
So your enjoyment of life sounds like it's improved hugely. What's life, if you were to summarize what your life is like now compared to what it was like before, how would you put that?
It's really happy, like actually deeply happy, and really proud of myself, what I've, you know, the adversity that I've been through and the struggles to get to where I am, and that I'm alive, well, happy and healthy, and I have kids, you know, that I can, you know, grow them emotionally and, you know, and nurture, and in a relationship that's really awesome. Through the last couple of years, it's been a little bit up and down, and understandably with all the stuff with COVID, but, you know, and my stuff as well. So it's to come out the other end and then look at all that I've achieved, you know, and I'm actually in a part-time or full-time role at the moment, education, health and wellbeing with the Te Kura Correspondence School. So that's another achievement for me, alongside doing my RTT, is to be back and, you know, helping others and helping the kids. So I think the self-esteem is raised a lot, and the confidence and the knowing who I am now, and having the toolbox that I've worked all the way through, and then to be here and go, cool, I can really kick ass now.
You're definitely going from
ready to go. I'm going to help. What's that?
You're definitely going from strength to strength, and it's awesome to see. It really is awesome to see you sort of blossom and thrive, and all the progress that you've made, you know, getting on the right pathway, the right track, and now getting the right kind of treatment. And yeah, it's just really quite awesome to see you blossoming. So what would you say to other people that are sort of considering, you know, considering the next step, considering doing an assessment? What would be your advice to someone who might be a bit nervous about, you know, what the next step?
Well, that's understandable, the nervous side, because I went through, I mean, I hadn't mentioned all the things that I went through, because I went through all the self-doubt after I'd done the report, and then the grieving afterwards, and there's a lot of, it's quite a journey, you know, like it's been a year since I was diagnosed, and at 46 being diagnosed as well, may I add. But for anybody that thinks that, you know, it's not right what they've been dealt, or how you've been struggling for so long, if any of what I've said fits for you and you can resonate with it, go and do a Loffty report, because if you haven't looked at ADHD yet and it comes up, it's so worth looking at, because you don't need to struggle for another 20 years if you're getting these mood disorders and bipolars, and I'm not discounting that if you have that whatsoever. I'm just saying that if that doesn't feel like it fits for you, and all these medications and psychologists and psychiatrists, and it's not fitting for you, you know, then definitely do the Loffty report, if, you know, and especially going through menopause for women. That's a lot of women are coming out in their 40s with this estrogen and, you know, the mucking around with the hormones with the dopamine. So
that exacerbates it. That's what you're saying.
It does exacerbate, and it makes it really, really hard to function. And if you might be going into a bit of depression that you haven't been in, or anxiety is really, really heightened when you're going through menopause. And what I've noticed with the ADHD meds is that the anxiety is gone. Like, I do have nervousness, but I don't have the debilitating anxiety. So don't survive, you want to thrive. So if you think, you know, that this fits for you, sorry about that. if you think that it's, what I've said resonates, definitely do the Loffty report and see what it comes out for you. You don't have to listen, because these people, they're telling you what you've got, they're going on what they know, and I'm not discounting them, but they can get it wrong. Like, I've had 46 years.
And it's just
it is what it is, but don't keep going thinking that they know it all. And that's not discounting whatsoever.
Well, they're crunched by the system, aren't they? They literally, a GP has 10 to 15 minutes and just can't possibly ask the amount of questions that we ask in a Loffty assessment. So, I think they're doing the best that they can, but yes, there are definitely shortcomings in the system.
Well, there's also different specialties. Like a lot of them may not even have much knowledge of it. So you want to make sure that you get. And I'd suggest you join the ADHD for Adults Facebook page, because in there, a lot of people that have been diagnosed will give you advice of who to go to, because that is a big one. Like, you can get your report and then take it to your psychologist, but a psychologist might not necessarily think that, and then it stops your road. But don't stop there with what the psychologist said. Go to the psychiatrist, and that someone within that group that specialises, or that has more knowledge of it. You don't have to stop there. If it's come out for you, don't stop it. If you think it fits after you're researching, and keep pushing, because it makes a world of difference.
Yes, the ADHD Association of New Zealand is a fantastic resource, and there's some great ADHD groups in Australia, particularly Melbourne. If you do a Google search or a Facebook search, you can find these groups and meet other people that have faced the same sort of challenges as yourself, and share ideas and resources. So that's a really great tip too. I just wanted to say that we haven't remunerated you for sharing your story.
Not at all.
You're not being paid to come here and share your story and your challenges and your breakthrough with us. You approached me, you wanted to just share this with other people and save other people years of heartache, really, didn't you?
Yeah, totally. I just don't want you to suffer more than you have to for longer in your life. And you know what else? We owe it to our kids as well. Like, if there's something going on that we haven't yet discovered, our children benefit from this. My children, from mum going from where she was to where she is, are going to have a better, home life with mum, knowing who she is. And that's my thing is prevention rather than cure. Like, I'm all knowing who you are, getting the right help that you need, and to be the best version of yourself. So it's about discovering it helps your family, your kids, your relationships, your career, and the noise that goes on with trying to work it out and whether you're going to go and do it, that's just the noise. And like I say, that switched off when I started the medication. For me, some people it might not. So don't listen to the noise. The negative noise it's trying to keep you safe, but it's just noise.
So be brave, just do it like Nike, get on there, do your assessment, and hopefully that is a huge turning point for you, just as it has been for Rachel. Rachel, it's been awesome to hear your story. I really thank you for your generosity, coming here today and sharing the journey that you've been on, and so appreciate it. And it's just so satisfying to see you really thriving. And I know great things are coming your way. So also I'll put some notes as to where you can find Rachel. She's an RTT therapist, as I said. I love personally RTT therapy myself. She's been a student of Marissa Peer. And if you think that could be for you also somewhere down the line, then check Rachel out. And I think, what's your website? Be
the best version of you, NZ. Be
the best version of you.
That's if you just Google Rachel Thorburn, Thorburn, RTT. And I was just like to say about that, it's about healing what's gone. If you get diagnosed or whatever, but you've still got stuff, or you've had trauma or whatever, I'd love to heal that for you. So, then you go on this great path because you've had the healing as well. So that's my, passion just to be the best version of you and have a great life.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time today, Rachel, and we'll catch up with you a bit later on.
And thanks for doing the Loffty, Gina. It's been life-saving. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Thank you.